100 years ago, in the Santa Susana Knolls area of Simi Valley, California, there was a winding dirt road that led up the hill to a place known as the Work of God. There was a golden temple on the top of the hill that was filled with what was called the Lord's furniture. There was a flock who was guided by the voice of the Archangel Gabriel, who spoke through the Reverend May Otis Blackburn. The sensational story of May Blackburn and her vivacious daughter Ruth began in Portland, Oregon in 1917 with the release of a film called A Nugget in the Rough. May formed the Starlight Film Company and placed her 18-year-old daughter Ruth in the first feature film ever produced in Portland. It was met with much local media attention, but despite the fanfare, the movie only ran for 1 week in the one theater where it was played. Undeterred, the two took their fledgling motion picture company to Hollywood, but they were met with complete indifference. Ruth began exotic dancing as May spent time in contemplation. One day they were both visited by the Archangel Gabriel, who told them to start a quasi-religious/scientific movement known as the Divine Order of the Royal Arms of the Great 11. In 1920, Los Angeles had just over 500,000 residents. The city in the sun was also becoming well known for its numerous occult and religious offshoot groups. Several were led by women, like Amy Semple McPherson, who founded the Angelus Temple in Los Feliz, which is considered the first megachurch in the United States. Margaret Rowan led the Reformed Seventh-day Adventist Doomsday Group in South Los Angeles, which predicted that the world would end on February 6, 1925. It was in this post-World War I environment that May and Ruth also began collecting followers and establishing group homes in places like Hollywood Boulevard, Bunker Hill, and the Wilshire District. It was in the Wilshire District that May found her greatest benefactor. Clifford Dabney was in the oil industry. He contributed over $40,000 to the Great 11 cult, and he purchased 126 acres of land for the group to use in the then isolated area of Santa Susana Knolls in the Simi Valley, at the top of what was known as Crown Hill. They built simple plywood cabins that were perched vicariously on the hillside of land that the county assessor deemed as worthless. They also began construction on a printing press that was going to be used to produce the Sixth Seal, a book that the angel Gabriel was dictating to May and Ruth. May promised that the Sixth Seal would explain the universe, man's existence, the nature of God, and how to find hidden treasures like gold, silver, and oil. In July 1929, after nearly 5 years of giving May all of his money and not seeing a single page of the Sixth Seal, nor being given the location of secret oil wells, Clifford Dabney filed fraud charges against May, Ruth, and other members of the Great 11 cult. 2 months later, in September of 1929, Clifford Dabney went to the LAPD Bunko Squad, claiming that he'd been hypnotized or mesmerized. The police offered to help him if he could provide any evidence that a crime other than gullibility had been committed. Shortly thereafter, the police received an anonymous tip informing them that a teenage member of the cult named Willa Rhodes had died 4 years earlier under mysterious circumstances, and that her body was being hidden. When the police visited her parents, William and Martha Rhodes, at their home in Venice, they were led to a coffin that was buried underneath the house. The body of their daughter was covered with ice, and there was a second coffin that contained the corpses of 7 small dogs. Martha Rhodes told the police that her daughter's body was being preserved in preparation for her resurrection. She said that the 7 dogs buried with her were a symbol of the power of resurrection. She also informed the police that she had previously resurrected 5 other people, including herself. Another anonymous tip led the police to the unmarked grave of Frances Turner. Paralyzed and mute, she was the sister of one of the cult members. The tipster told the police that May Blackburn had placed the woman inside of a makeshift brick oven for 2 days in an effort to cure her of her physical maladies. Frances Turner died in the oven. When the Great 11 cult began making headlines, the family of one Sami Rizzio also contacted the police. Sami was the husband of May's daughter Ruth, and he'd gone missing 5 years earlier after a physical fight with Ruth. A pharmacist named Eleanor Sandrosky, who was a former member of the Great 11, told authorities that May had ordered poison from her in order to kill Sami Rizzio. May and Ruth both said that Sami had left the cult in shame after hitting Ruth and had even left a letter apologizing. Police determined that Sami had left the cult without taking any of his belongings, and they declared the note explaining his departure a forgery. Sami Rizzio's body was never found, and his whereabouts went undetermined. The police additionally became aware of and located the grave of yet another woman named Harleen Satoris, who had died on the Great 11 cult's Santa Susana colony property the previous year. A search warrant was then issued when it was discovered that up to 9 people were possibly missing from the mystic cult. The national newspapers arrived on the scene and began publishing a series of sensational articles detailing the bizarre rituals and practices of what they were now calling LA's death cult. 50 to 60 of May's followers were living in simple plywood shacks in the Santa Susana colony. May was living in a modern home on Sunset Canyon Drive in Burbank near a private country club when she was arrested. May's trial lasted 7 weeks and took place at the Hall of Justice in downtown Los Angeles. Testimony at the trial revealed the complete control that May exerted over her dedicated followers' daily activities, diets, and living conditions, and the fact that followers of all ages were required to refer to her as Mother. This extended to her own mother, Jenny Blackburn, and her stepfather, Walter Blackburn, who gladly gave all of his money to May to form the Walter Blackburn Publishing Company. The trial also brought out the fact that the angel Gabriel had told May to chain her mother to a bed for over 2 months. Jenny Blackburn did not complain though, and she said it was the happiest 2 months of her life. May was married to Ward Blackburn. He was her 5th husband and her stepbrother. He was 19 years younger than she was, and his job in the Great 11 cult was to predict the weather by collecting rainwater in a metal coffee can. He also spent his days and nights counting exactly how many trains went by the cult's property and reporting the numbers to May. Ironically, it was Ruth who was the only one not required to refer to May as Mother. She simply called her May, and the two passed themselves off as sisters. On March 2, 1930, a jury of 8 women and 4 men convicted May Blackburn of 8 counts of grand theft. She was ordered to serve 1 to 14 years per count at San Quentin State Prison. May appealed her conviction all the way up to the California Supreme Court. The court agreed that there was substantial evidence both for and against the grand larceny charges involving Clifford Dabney, but testimony about May attempting to obtain poison to kill Sami Rizzio and testimony about May telling Martha Rhodes to hide the body of her daughter Willa for resurrection had no bearing on the larceny charges. The Supreme Court ruled that this was improperly admitted evidence and it was extremely prejudicial towards May. The judgment and order were reversed, and May was set free. The court said that a person believing that they have divine power are entitled to proclaim it, under the doctrine of religious freedom. When the district attorney declined to retry May on the charges of grand theft, she returned to her hilltop colony in Santa Susana. In 1936, she finally published her book, which she called The Origin of God, written by the Reverend May Otis Blackburn. After they failed to resurrect their daughter, William and Martha Rhodes were forced to give Willa a proper burial. They attempted to bury her with the 7 canine corpses, but their request was denied. William and Martha died a week apart in 1944 and were buried with Willa. As of today, Martha Rhodes has yet to resurrect herself a second time. What was it about May Blackburn that attracted her followers? Members claim that she had a hypnotic personality and a mesmerizing presence. The youngest member of the Great 11 cult described her as otherworldly. It was also said that she had a force of will that deterred anyone from challenging or doubting her words. She controlled her followers' lives by issuing what she called concords. A concord was described as activity related to procuring a harmonious condition between oneself and the solar system. Clifford Dabney said that everyone obeyed all of her demands because it would have meant life or death if we didn't. May Blackburn died from a heart attack in 1951. When she was alive, her followers were not allowed to touch her or come within 6 feet of her. May is buried in the Valhalla Cemetery in Burbank. Her mother Jenny and stepfather Walter are buried 6 feet away from her. She purchased all of the burial plots around her, so as it was in life, it is in death. May Otis Blackburn remains untouchable.